It's that time again. It's the Moneyball transfer window special, and it's coming up next. Hello everyone and welcome back to our Moneyball series. Yes, it is that time again. I cannot wait for this episode. It's always a fun one. And depending on how early I start the episode, like recording it, depends on whether it's the same day or not. And maybe you can tell in this episode if it's all done in one sitting or not. And it's just purely because I take so much time to go through the players. Those of you that have seen me do the Moneyball saves before on Twitch can know that sometimes this can take quite a long time in the summer. Not always, but sometimes it can. And I think this summer could be a quite long one because it's going to involve us potentially selling some key players and making decisions, because sometimes it gets to a point where you could sell a really key player that's really good for you, but you might get like 20 million, 25 million, and you think, right, okay, I can replace him for something similar and get a first-team player somewhere else, and that's how you organically grow your Moneyball team, right? And don't forget now, we've got 2 bloody Moneybags, 2 Tycoon teams to be going against, and we could also get taken over any time, which would be bad during the season, during the transfer window rather. There's that to watch out for going into today. So what I thought we'd start off with is a quick review of some of the player stats. Again, I said, I'm not going to look too much at team stats this year just because we changed tactics so much ourselves. I don't think we're going to learn too much because we change our tactics so drastically. So we're going to look at some players, because it might be that we think a player is really key, but the gap between them and the second best player on the team isn't that big, so you can sell the player with the higher value, right? If they're significantly higher in value, that is. Okay, so we're going to look at centre-backs first. Now, I've set them in order of how I feel like they've done during the season. So I feel like Christensen was my best centre-back, Badiashile being second, Faresi third, Jensen fourth, right? But let's see if those stats match up to what I feel like was the case. So, tackle-win ratio, Christensen has quite low. But I've said before, in a back three, that can happen. The middle centre-back can end up with quite a low tackle ratio. Badiashile and Faresi both quite similar on just 70%. That feels like that's pretty low for the side centre-backs. And we did get the new patch sort of 3/4 of the way through, so might be slightly harder to judge this year, but there you are. Jensen with 97%, that is good. Tackles per 90, pretty close across the board there, which is quite interesting. Interceptions per 90 goes to Jensen. So Jensen's actually played pretty well according to the stats, but so Faresi has even dipped just below that. And I'd say this year, I feel like that he did have a bit of a step backwards, but like, is he worth selling, Faresi, at 1 million? Is that going to be a difference for us? Faresi cannot be a starting centre-back for us next year, especially if we start with the back four, with the back three. And that does become the question, right? What tactic do we go with? We're sort of stuck a little bit with that. I did like the way that this finished, to be fair. But maybe I'd go with 4 centre-backs plus Faresi, because if we go to a back 3, having 5 is just enough to survive. But if we go to a back 4, I don't have to rely on Faresi to be one of the 4, maybe. Not sure at this second, actually. That's going to be a tough one. Maybe we keep these 4 and sign 1 more? Oh, I don't know, that's going to be tough, isn't it? Okay, so fullbacks this time, I've gone with the first choice right back, backup right back, first choice left back, backup left back. That's how I've sort of done it here. Let's analyse this. Dribbles per 90 goes massively to Osei Samuel. Obviously, Osei Samuel and Larson both played as wingers towards the back end of the season when we moved to a different formation. But looking across this, headers 1 ratio, I mean, Osei Samuel 39%. That's not great, is it? It's not great at all. Interceptions per 90, Larson has the lowest. Again, they moved to the advanced areas and played on the wing a little bit, didn't he? Tackle 1 ratio, very similar across the board there, actually, which is quite interesting. Open play, key passes per 90, Quinton Merlin, 2.34. Now, because you could say, right, because Quinton Merlin did take some set pieces, in previous FMs, Quinton Merlin's key passes per 90 would be pretty high. And it'd be hard to differentiate how good he really was, because it wouldn't tell us what his stat was in open play. It does now. In FM23, because we've got the open play key passes per 90 stat, we know for a fact that all those key passes here were in open play. So they weren't set pieces. So that allows us to know that Quinton Merlin is an extremely good creative player. And his cross accuracy was only 21%, which is good. It's not great, but it's good. But his open play key passes was very good. Progressive passes wasn't even that high. But his chances created was, like, he was really good. Again, Quinton Merlin, is it worth selling him for like 5 million? Probably not. Unless there was somebody close to this, but I mean, I doubt it. Really, really good player. And Quinton Merlin could be a fullback in a back four or a wing back in a 3 at the back system. So I'm quite happy with him. And in terms of the right wing backs, it's hard to judge them, right? Because they both sort of flip-flop between who was starter, who wasn't, and they also changed position. So it's hard to say about those top two, but I don't think either of them are indispensable. Probably Larson. Do you know what? Looking at that, considering they're quite close, and he's worth like double Osei Samuel, I probably would sell Larson, especially if we go to a back four, because as a winger, he didn't really excel. And Osei Samuel looks like he's as good option as him. So I think if we're going to sell somebody, it probably would be Larson. I know Osei Samuel's got a wanted sign. Let's give him a little offer out and see what we get for him. Okay, so pivot players. There was mainly 3 that we used across the season. It was this 3 here. Ndai being the best, I think. Samuel being the second best. And then Leopold coming on off the bench quite a lot. So a lot of Leopold's stats are him coming on as a sub, which is not easy to like correlate with the other lads. But let's have a look anyway. So Ndai has got not the most open play key passes, incidentally, which is quite interesting. Chances created penalty goes to Samuel. Progressive passes goes to Samuel. I just feel like whenever we lost in big games, like games away from home, any sort of tough game, I felt like Samuel was the problem in central midfield, if there was a problem. And the fact that him and Ndai are rated similar in terms of valuation, I think is quite interesting. And it could mean that Samuel gets put out of the club. But they're different players. Like looking at dribbles per 90, Ndai massively ahead of Samuel. Tackle win ratio massively into Samuel's favour. Tackles per 90 goes to Ndai. Interceptions per 90 though goes to Ndai as well. That's interesting because that should really go to Samuel, I would have thought. But yeah, and then header one ratio, 40%, 68%, then 29%. Wow. One of these is not like the other, and that is Enzo Leopold. So yeah, I'm not massively impressed with any of them really. I thought Ndai was our best player, but I felt like he slightly underperformed, and I felt like Samuel was pretty good actually. I felt like they felt quite similar players. I reckon we look at their attributes that Ndai be a better player, but they were quite similar in the matches, with the one exception of being in the big matches. Now, does Samuel doesn't enjoy big matches or something? It doesn't say it. Consistent performer, it says. I didn't see any evidence of that, Mr. Coach, but from Tom over here, don't believe you, Tom. I don't believe you for a second. He was awful in those games. So yeah, the number 10s here, it's hard to compare them because Da Costa started almost every game. He had hardly any injuries across the season, which is really good. And I felt like Garrow's quite a good player. Oh my God, look at his valuation though. 12 to 14 million. Oh, he's got to go. I'm sorry, he's got to go. As much as I like Garrow, the fact that he's a backup player for us. I mean, okay, no. So think this out. If we play a system like this, with like 2 central field players, attacking midfield players, however you want to look at it, Garrow's a really good player, really effective player. But could we get potential, like if I was to sell him for 10, let's just say 10, I feel like I could get a replacement for him, another central field player, and probably a fullback, which we might need because we're going to back 4, all for the same amount of money. That's interesting. He has got 7 goals, 10 assists. I feel like he's a good player. Let's just compare this anyway here. So I'm looking at expected assist. He's ahead of Da Costa on that. Expected assist per 90, of course. Open play key passes goes to Garrow. Progressive passes goes to Garrow. Passes completely per 90 goes to Garrow. Conversion ratio goes to Da Costa. Shot on target ratio goes to Da Costa. Dribbles per 90 goes to Da Costa. Distance cover per 90 goes to Garrow. Now, Garrow did play a fair amount of games in the pivot role, either from the start or from the bench. So there is that to consider a little bit. Header one ratio 15% from Da Costa. That's so poor. There's also the argument that Da Costa could play as a winger in a like a 4-3 kind of system, which is basically what this is. Imagine it's like a 4-3-3 is what it is. You got your back 4, you got midfield 3, which is CDM here, 2 playmakers or playmaker and shadow striker, then the front 3. Those who really are going to be slightly deeper in the pitch in the initial stage, right? But okay, so forwards here, I think that Boniface was the best player that we had up front. But let's have a look at this. Let's see what happens. So non-penalty XG per 90. So what kind of errors are they getting into here? How good chances are they getting receiving anyway? And Boniface was the most closely behind was Yakubu, with Preacher being third. XG overperformance. Aziz Yakubu missed almost everything, and that shows there. Victor Boniface had a 2.5, which is good and probably more sustainable. But most players are in that sort of like 3.5 to 5.5 is really good for the players that we've seen. And, some players, that's like, they can't sustain that. Some players just can consistently keep finishing at tight angles in areas where the XG is slightly lower. But minutes per goal by far goes to Boniface. So Boniface only scored 3 more goals than Preacher, but he had 7 less starts, and had obviously a lot less minutes because his minutes per goal is much lower than Preacher's, right? So he's got by far the best. Evidence actually second for that, but he's only had 6 sub appearances, so, sample size for stats is always important. Conversion ratio goes to, Boniface. Evidence we can ignore, actually. He's not even had a single start, really. Let's take him out of that. Conversion ratio goes to Boniface. Preacher being below that. Shot on target ratio goes to Boniface. And something you'll notice here, though, incidentally, something you'll notice and be probably just as upset as I am, look at Preacher's value. We were getting like £23 million offers for him in the last summer, and now he's valued at 9.8 million. And if we're going to move to a system that has wingers, I might use him as a winger, so I'd have to get at least 20, I think, to sell him. I'm not sure what you think, but I think at least 20. I can't see myself selling him for less than that. That seems like quite a harsh thing to have happened there. Dribbles per 90 goes to Yakubu. Boniface quite low on that. He has got the trait plays with back to goal, so that could have been a big factor in it. Header ratio, pretty okay with the top 3. I mean, obviously Adele, who played on the wing for the last few games, is quite low. It's extremely low, in fact. Everybody else is fairly high. And that is pretty much it. So looking at that, Aziz Yakubu's value is way overstating his production, so he's going to be the first one transfer listed. Preacher could be a second. It depends on what the amount is. Now, is this going to change? Is it going to go back to normal levels? If it does, we could consider selling Preacher. I think I'm going to keep Boniface no matter what, because I don't think we can guarantee a striker to do as well as he did. But we'll see. We'll see who's available, really. What I'm saying is I'm not happy with going and selling him. I'm really happy. I'm going to sell Yakubu if I can. Preacher I'm actually okay with as well. It's just Boniface who would be... I'd need to see somebody I'm happy with for me to sell him. But he's not off the table. Not many players are. Okay, I'm just going to flick through now all the stats we're going to buy for this year. I'm not going to sit and go through every single one. I'm going to have it at least on the screen so you can pause it and copy it if you'd like to, and that kind of stuff. So we can do that quickly now. Okay, here are the striker numbers. I'm just going to look at a couple here. What is the overperformance? 5.9, which is interesting. Who had really high performance then? But both of their players did. Ours was the most realistic. It brings it more down to realistic levels. The extra performance there, which is interesting. Jules per is pretty high. It's going to be brought up by Mbappe, right? Oh, no, not too much, actually. Interesting. Header 1 ratio is pretty low for their 2 strikers. It's only our striker that's brought it back up. So for the attacking field players, we're going to be looking at open play key passes per 90 of 1.6 and a Jules per 90 of 1.75. Obviously, we're going to be looking at more than just those things. I'm just reading out a couple of them. You can pause the video and see them for yourself, right? For the pivot players, tackle win ratio of 71%, header 1 ratio of 55%, Jules per 90 of 1, basically 1.05. And then open play key pass of 0.87. That's quite low, actually. Wing backs, we're looking at dribbles per 90 of 3.12. Cross completion of 18%. That's pretty low. Sprints per 90 of 21. And header 1 ratio of 59%. Centre backs, header 1 ratio of 84%. Again, really 81, I think, is the minimum. As we can see here, of the 3 centre backs, the lowest person's got 81. I do think that's a pretty good bare minimum to go for header 1 ratio for the most part in most leagues anyway. And we're looking at a tackle win ratio of only 71%. That's quite low, isn't it? Progressive passes per 90 of 4.9. Open play key passes per 90 of 0.36. Dribbles per 90 of 0.39. Interceptions per 90 of 3.4. And some other ones there. And that is going to do it. Right. What I'm going to do now off camera is going to go through a few weeks. I'm going to scout some players using this as well. But before I start even scouting, for the next week, what I'm going to do here is just transfer this some of our current players and see what comes back. So let's just come back around, I don't know, 10th of June, let's say 10th of June. Let's come back then and let's see who we managed to get rid of or at least get offers out on so we know roughly the amount of money we're going to have to spend. And then we'll do some scouting together. You can see the scouting with me, of course. That's the whole point of this episode. That's what we're all here for, is to see the Moneyball process going through to its conclusion from the start to the finish. So you'll join me back in about 8 days time. We'll say roughly the 10th of June, and let's see what we're able to do in terms of players out and what money we got for our stats. Okay, quick update then. We've managed to bring in a player actually that I forgot to tell you about that I'd already scouted from last year. So Mario Gila, he comes in, he looks like a really good centre-back. Now, he wasn't really bought on the stats he got us this season, or the season just gone. It was the one before, but he was on my shortlist anyway, and I was able to get him for quite a cheap deal because he was transfer listed. He comes in for £5 million, and that is a really good start for us into the transfer window because that's a really good centre-back. And in terms of players that were able to get rid of Jensen for 2.5 million, we signed him for 2, sold him for 2.5, good £500 profit on him, which is good to see. We've currently got the centre-back Christensen on an offer for 7.75. Now, the reason is, if I go to a back four, Badiashile and Mario that we've just signed, those two are my centre-backs. So Christensen isn't really needed there. I don't need to have 3 first-choice centre-backs, so it's going to be a case of what do we go for. I'm going to confirm this last. I want to make sure I'm absolutely certain about going to a back four, because if we stay in a back three, I'm going to need Christensen to be my middle centre-back of the back three, right? So it's going to be a case of what are we going to play. Leopold's got an offer of 4.2 million. Garrow, I'm not sure about yet either, so potentially a £4 million transfer up front, 7.5 million overall to Celtic. Signed for £2 million, it was a good transfer, wasn't it? And Yakubu's already confirmed is going to join Club Brugge for £3.8 million. Now, to get a profit on him after the season he has, and he was quite ineffective, really, had a really low conversion ratio and that kind of stuff, right? So we'll see. And then Preacher, 20 million straight up we've got from Leon. I said earlier in the episode, no, from Villarreal actually. I did say earlier in the episode, if we got that, that's my minimum would be 20 straight up. And that's what we've got. So again, I'm going to delay it and confirm it last to see, or one of the last ones, to see whether it's something we definitely want to do. But the option is there. I want to see how much actual budget we'll get from it, because I don't know how much of it goes to his previous club. I think half of it does. So we'll have to see. Oh, Bryn Larsen's going as well, 3.7, nice. Okay, so let's start searching for players. So I've just started off with the strikers. I've put all the stats in, and guess what? Nobody has come up yet again for us at striker. So have a look through now. We'll start off with our recruitment process and see how we can go with the players we've got, so with the stats that we've got. And I'll bring you up to date with anybody that we find. And starting off with the striker, nobody has turned up. What I've started to do is, if players don't turn up with all the averages, is as I'm going through, I lower the individual stat to the lowest player of the three first before I do anything else. So, for example, conversion ratio, the average of all three players is 21, but the lowest anybody had was 19. It's pretty close between the three, right? So now we just go to 19. So I'm slowly doing that as we go as a first step. So I found a striker here called Velmus Kraft. He looks really good, apart from his header one ratio, which is quite low. But apart from that, it looks right across the board. Minutes per goal is probably a little bit high. 50 starts. Maybe it is a little bit high, actually, that. But he's worth £25 million, which is a shame, because if he was worth a lower amount. I've seen a lot of good strikers and lots of good stats that we could buy, but we can't afford it. They're worth £20 million, like our entire budget. So frustrating this is. Okay, we may have just found a diamond in the rough. Now, he's still expensive a little bit. Might be able to get that transfer down a little. But Barbosa here, now the reason he's caught my eye, he scored 6 in 5 starts. Again, 5 starts is my minimum, but he's also got 11 sub appearances on top of that, which is good. Because also sometimes in the summer, when you start searching for players, the Brazilian league is only around a quarter, maybe halfway through. What is it, 10 games they're into now at some point like that? Something like that. So there are some leagues that you're going to have to wait for the sample size to build or go early, with it, right? So Barbosa's probably just been promoted to the first team because he's only 19, but his minutes per goal is outstanding. 133 minutes per goal. That's better than Boniface, not quite as good as the other two strikers in our list. So he'd be the third best player in our league. Well, of the top 3 teams. Conversion ratio is good. Shot target ratio is good. Everything is good, except for the header one ratio, but it's only 30%. And what we're looking for, a minimum of 30%. So I'm going to scout him. I think he could be amazing. How much do they want? Can we get him cheaper? Probably not. We'll scout him anyway. Now, this guy here called Ray, I think he could be a good winger. He's not going to be a striker. 19% header on ratio. Don't care how good the rest of your stats are, mate. That is not happening. That is just not going to happen for us. It's going to be better than that. Everything else is good. Minutes per goal is extremely good. He has banged in the goals. Let's have a look at his winger stats here. Let's have a look at him here a second. So, dribbles per 90, where we're looking here. He's not dribbling, though. His shot on target ratio is 69%. That's incredible. His conversion ratio is 27. What are we looking for? That's higher than Mbappe by quite a distance. His shot on target ratio is... Mbappe's only 45%. What's his minutes per goal? He's a little bit far off from Mbappe. Mbappe's header one ratio is, wait for it, 19%. Is Ray the next Mbappe? For me to sign a striker with 19% header one ratio, they've got to have everything else perfect, and he does. We'll see what it comes back with. His team are 14th, incidentally, in the league table. Thiago Tomás, I'm looking at the Greek league right now, just going through their players, and he looks pretty good across the board. His header ratio is slightly low, but that's okay for what we're looking for. Dribbles per 90 is extremely high, which is what I'm looking for as him being excellent at something else. If he's not going to be good in the air, probably worth a scout. I have just been through the lists. I've gone through individual leagues. I've looked at this list. I've changed numbers down. I've got like 20 players being scouted because there are a lot of players that like they could be good, but they play at a terrible level, but their stats look okay. Some players have got really good stats in a good league, but not played as many matches. So for many different reasons, there's a lot of players that are not concrete signings, but they could be. So I've just scattered all of them. I've not gone through them all with you because there's a lot there. If they come back and they look good, I'll then speak to you about them then. But for now, what I'm going to do is move on to the number 10s and start to scout some of those and see who we get early on from that. I might need to search for wingers as well, so I might have to make like a brand new filter in here for wingers going forwards. And then what I'd probably do is use a bit of our current stats for like attacking midfielders, and then maybe look at FM Stag stats for wingers as well in the game and in our skin itself. And another reason why we don't really need to look at the strikers as much, I think, this year is because if we go to a 4-3-3 system, we've already got Boniface. He's going to stay right. That's one striker. We've already got a backup striker, really, in terms of evidence. He could be the third choice striker, really. But if we keep Preacher as well, like, we don't really need to get like 2, 3, 4 strikers in the squad this time around. We could do with probably 3. If we count Boniface and evidence as 2, we just need 1. So we'll see what comes back, but we might not even need to sign a striker at all. If we keep Preacher as well, and we get like the good wingers that are available, it's going to be hard to buy one. So in terms of strikers, it's going to be quite hard to actually bring in somebody who's going to be worth the stats that they provide for us, because we don't know if they're going to start necessarily. But in terms of number 10s, then there are 2 players that stand out to me immediately here. Evander is the first one, because he, before I even change anything, he's the first person that appeared. Evander hits almost every single stat. He is incredible. So we're definitely going to be scouting him. He looks like an incredible player. And most of all, he's worth £4.7 million. Now, if we were to offer some percentage of the next sale or some kickbacks, we get that down even more. We could probably sign Evander for like, I don't know, maybe 1 million up front, something like that. So it could be a really, really good signing for us. Now, this lad's here, he is not my shortlist for anything he did this season whatsoever. He is on my shortlist for what he did last season. Again, he just sort of scraped the barrel in terms of the 7 starts that he had, but 23 sub appearances as well. And he looks really good. And I mean, he hasn't played at all for Rennes this year. So, how much could we get him for? So, if I did some proper kickbacks, I reckon 3 up front I could get him for. And he's only 21. So, he could be an incredible player as well. So, I would definitely sell my current central fielders if I needed to get those 2 in. You've got somebody that's going to go in right now. And he could also play as a pivot player as well, right? Potentially. If we need him to, but like I'm excited about that. I think those 2 could both be outstanding. Although I'm a little concerned it's got Enzo Leopold as my best central field player. So that's not very good. And welcome back, everybody. Yes, it is a brand new day for me. Obviously not for you. Same episode, of course. But we're going to go through pivot players now and see if we can get some pivot players for next season and see who can appear in our list. We're going to search for that right now. I've got all the stats put in already and already taken some down because nobody appeared, of course, at the start. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first player that we're going to look at is Nicholas Raskin. I've had to manually search this because the search filters weren't bringing up anybody for this position, unlike the last one. So with him, we've got open play key pass is 1.09, and we need a 0.87, which is better. He's better in chances to get per 90. The 2 that I'm looking for here, well, a few actually, pass completion. We need 88. He's got 84, but he's played some games as central field as well as playing as a pivot, so he's got a bit of that. Tackle win ratio, he's got 83%. We are looking for somebody with 71, so he's way above on that. And then we've got header win ratio of 49. We're looking for 55. He's a little bit low on that, but he's higher in others, right? And then interceptions per 90. We're looking for somebody for 2.08. He's got 1.97. So he's close and definitely worth a scout. So we're going to give him 1 here. Okay, look at the Danish league. They've got a player called Miguel Crespo. Now, if I can get him slightly cheaper than his current valuation, he scored quite a lot across the board here. Only 28 starts, which is obviously way above our minimum, of course, but it's a little low compared to the other starting players, so I don't know what his story is and why he didn't start more matches, but the only thing that disappoints me about him is his tackle win ratio at 63%, when it should be 71, but everything else is pretty decent, maybe head-on ratio as well, but he's really good in possession, he gets a lot of interceptions, which is important, and is slightly behind on the raw, like, out of possession, nailing players in the tackle, winning his battles effectively in the air as well. Apart from that, he looks pretty good. A nice cultured player. Lots of passes completed per 90 as well, which is good. Okay, Elliot Matazzo looked a pretty good play. He had 24 starts, 22 off the bench. Played a lot of games this team here. 61 starts for the goalkeeper, or Andrew here, who I might look at in a second for the goalkeeper. Now, he looks okay across the board on his stats. A lot of pressures from like, I guess he's playing like a central field position, not just necessarily a pivot. But he looks quite good across the board. Tackle ratio is exactly bang on what we're looking for. Head-on ratio is slightly lower, but he's pretty good across the board, and he looks good in possession in particular, which is going to be a good thing if he has to play in a possession-based system for us. Okay, so we might have found a wonder kid here. Olkan Rikichi, not quite sure how to pronounce this name here. So I'm looking for a CDM, right, a pivot player. He could be a centre-back as well, but his open play passes isn't far off at all. His progressive passes per 90 is a little low. His pass completion is quite low as well. Dribbles per 90 is good. Head-on ratio is good. Interceptions per 90 is extremely high, actually. So I'm going to scout him. He could be an outstanding player for us, either centre-back or CDM. I resorted to just putting almost nothing in the search bar apart from appearances, age, and interceptions per 90. And I've sorted it from that, and I'm going down the whole list to see who I can find. And it looks like I might have found somebody, so it was worth it. Okay, I've looked through enough of these. I'm going to move on to wingbacks next. Souza in the Brazilian League looks like he could be a really good player for the future. He's probably a little pricey for us this season, but he's going to go on the list in any case for now. Right, that was difficult. There aren't many players there that I think is going to be worth it at fullback, to be honest. That was a long process that didn't get much reward. So, we'll see. Okay, move on to centre-backs now anyway. So, for yet another year in a row, Andy Palmard appeared on my list. Now, I don't normally shortlist him and scout him too much because he's worth too much money, but it's getting close to where we could get him, and he could probably play as a CDM for us as well. So, I'm going to shortlist him and scout him this time round. Juan David Vazquez. He scores highly in tackle win ratio, 88%. Blocks, that's not blocks per 90. Interceptions per 90, 3.0. That's really high. Progressive passes per 90, 3.65 for a centre-back in a back four, not a back three. The only downside, not good in the air. So that's normally the big thing that we need, but everything else is so good. Does it make up for that? I don't know, but I think we've got to scout him. He looks like he could be incredible. What do the old scouts think of him? 2 stars? Oh, that's nonsense. Surely he's going to be better than that. Now, the last 2 things for me to look at is going to be the goalkeeper, and then I need to make a search filter for the wingers as well. Because going forward, if I'm going to change the back four, I'm going to need to use wingers right. So I need to do that at some point. I think for now, I could be okay if I use Adele, Preeka, and some others as wingers. But that's something I need to do either this transfer or at the end of it anyway for next season. And that is going to do our little part there of us looking for players. So the shortlist has grown. So don't forget, there's a lot of players on the shortlist from the previous couple of seasons as well. Some of them are beyond the point of us really wanting to buy them. I think I'll have to go through and tidy this up. But I've scoured everybody one more time. Pretty much everybody anyway that was on the list already. So I'm going to go through this now. We're going to sell some players. You'll join me towards the end of June, and we'll see who managed to sell, definitely, and who managed to get in early doors. But I'm really excited about this list. I think there's some players that could really change the team around. I'm going to buy the team and buy the stats with the vision of us playing a 4 at the back system, and we'll see how the team develops from there. I'd probably use Osei Samuel, could be a winger or a... Do you know what? I'd probably use him as a fullback in a pep tactic. So yeah, let's see what happens anyway. Join me in a few weeks and let's see how we got on. And welcome back. So it's a little later than I said. It's actually going to be mid to late July instead of late June. But we've got through quite a few transfers and let's see what we managed to do. I'm quite excited about this season, but let's see how everybody else thinks we're going to get on. Preferred formation, 5-2-1-2, DM, AM, asymmetric, AM bracket, CL bracket. Okay, we managed to sign Andrew, the goalkeeper. Now, we saw him earlier when we were looking at another club, and I said that I'd go back to him if I felt like that he had the good stats for the goalkeeper position, and he actually came up in this search like bar itself, not even looking back at the club specifically. And what I'm so excited about this player and getting this goalkeeper in is I bought him for 550 grand, and he's worth 11 to 14 million pounds already. I think he could be genuinely brilliant, and thank goodness we've got a replacement for Christensen. I think he could be the one at goalkeeper, so let's see what happens. I'm not ultra familiar with his player profile in FM before. I can't say I've signed him before, even looked at him, I don't think. So we'll see how he goes. Murahim Huskovic. Now, he looks really good. Manchester United were in for him at one point. So Obviously, he was in high demand. He comes in for 7.25 million all up front. So there's no kickbacks, no nothing, which is really important, I think, for us going forwards, that we do get quite a few of our transfers all up front, or at the very least with no sell-on clause, so that when we sell the player, we get that transfer budget back. That's probably more important than necessarily doing it in installments, is making sure they're not all on a percentage of the next sell transfers. So he comes in all up front, comes into play on the side of the front three, could play as a striker as well, looks really good. Isaac Johansson. Now, he comes in for 11.25 million, again, all up front, and it's already worth nearly £7 million. So this could be a really good player. He's been brought in to sort of play as our number 10, one of our two number 10s if we play that sort of 4-3-3 type system, but he could also go and play wide, and depending on the tactic we play, he could probably do a few different useful things for us. So I'm really excited to have him in part of the team, and he looks like he could be a really good wonder kid, and probably somebody we could sell in a couple of years' time for a lot of money. So really good all-round transfer, I think. Olkan Rakitic. Now, I'm going to call it right now. He is going to be unbelievable. Either he's going to be our starting player for the next few years, or we're going to keep him for a couple of years and probably sell him for something way above his statistical output for us and his statistical value, as we sort of say on this channel. So Rakic's statistical value is something we need to really keep track of, because I think his valuation is going to stay high if he plays. He's been brought into play either as a centre-back or as a pivot player in a 4-3-3. I think in a 4-2-3-1, anything with two pivots, he's probably going to be more of a centre-back. But in a single pivot where he's going to be the sort of focal point of the defensive side and being there to defend counter-attacks, that type of thing, I think he's going to be a lot better for us as a single pivot or a centre-back. And in any case, he's worth a lot of money. We signed him for 9.5 all up front. And despite his average rating not being great, he had really good stats, and ironically, pretty good stats for a pivot player as opposed to a centre-back, even though that's where he played the majority of the time, but not all the time. But what a player, and potentially an unbelievable signing. Salza comes in at left wing back. Now, on his coach report, they say that he's got acceleration and possesses great pace, which obviously is good for us. That's always nice to see. 5.25 million, again, all up front, and a pretty good signing, I think, and he's going to be a really good player for the Pep tactic in particular. The other tactics I'm not too sure. For the Pep tactic, he's perfect, he's fairly cheap, and he's probably not going to be a good enough player to be our left wing back going forward for multiple years. But for this year, he's good. We'll see how he does from a stats perspective, and then we'll move on from there, I guess. Juan David Vazquez was a centre-back that looked really good with his stats early on, playing in Colombia. He's only 18, comes in. He is now worth 19 to 29 million pounds, and we paid for him 1.5 million all up front. So again, you're starting to see a lot of players there where they're probably going to be pretty good. I would expect so. That's why we signed them, for the stats, right? But if they're not good, they're still going to be a player that we can cash in on and get a sizable profit, you would think, right? So I think there's not much of a chance to lose in this transfer. If he was to be quite poor this year, it's likely, and let's say his valuation really does take a hit from that, it's likely we could then load him up for the second season, then sell him in the third while it goes back up a bit. That's the plan if it was worst case scenario, but hopefully he's just really, really good, and he's going to get a lot of game time because of the way the Champions League's done now, right? He's going to get game time in the Champions League, in the French Cup, I think, but I need to make sure we win a trophy soon, so we'll see about that. Miguel Crespo. Now, Miguel Crespo, I nearly didn't sign, but he scored so perfectly in the stats I was looking for a ball-playing and progressive passing pivot player. I had to sign him. So he comes in, he's worth a lot of money. We paid a decent amount for him, I think. Well, 6.5, not too much, I guess. It was a lot considering how much budget I had left. So it was like one of those where I can sign one more player. Who do I get? And I've got other pivot players that would be good enough, like Samuel's good enough. But if I wanted to play Pep Guardiola-style system and be very effective this year in the title race, etc., he had to come in. So he comes in, and we'll see how he goes. I mean, I have no idea if he's going to be good enough, but we'll find out. Elliot Matazu comes in on a free transfer, basically just a backup player, like a right-footed version of Samuel, really. Going to play a bit of the pivot role, emergency fullback. Yeah, an emergency player, really. Free transfer, had good stats, can't really lose. And last but not least, Maximilian Bayer, I want to go with here. Not quite sure on the pronunciation, but he comes in for £10.5 million. He's going to play as a wide player for us. Can play as a striker, would probably be an effective striker in a 2 because he has great acceleration, great pace. So, yeah, we're starting to see a ability in the team to play different systems and be effective in all right. I think that if Bayer plays as a winger in a front 3, I think he's good enough. If he plays up front in a 2, I think he's good enough. A single striker system up front, I'm not sure, but we'll find out if that happens. He could do it if he needed to. So I'm excited about that transfer as well. 10.5 million looks like a pretty good deal, and we'll see what develops from there. So in terms of players out, you have Jensen and Christensen going out for around £6.5 million between the two there. And, well, actually, just noticing here, transfers in is only 33 million. We've actually sold more players than we've bought, which is really impressive because I think, we don't know, of course, but I think we've improved the team 2, 3, 4-fold. I think we're really, really good compared to what we were, but we've made money doing it. It's quite impressive, really. I'm sure it'll all be undone by the two Moneybag teams, but we'll see. We've got Rodrigo Garro leaving for 5.75 million, then 7.5 in total with the installments, etc. Farese left 1.4 million. Larson went for 5.75. Yakuba for 3.8. That's a pretty good transfer for us. Christensen went for 5. I didn't need to sell Christensen. He was a really good player. But if we're going to a back four and I had these other centre-backs I wanted to buy, I had to do it, basically. Leopold for 1. Mensah for 1. Pritchard for 20 million. So the reason that Bayer was signed was because I could sell Pritchard and I might have one more player coming in as well. And then Nail's able to be gone as well. But Tim Pritchard leaving is the big one, really. But we also have Evander. So now Evander, I have already signed on a free transfer. So he comes in on a free January 1st. The reason I've not brought him in just yet is because, of course, you have the feature where you can do the buy now option, right? So right now they're demanding 2.9 million. But right at the end of the transfer window, that's another month from now, I'm sure that's going to plummet right down. So I'm trying to wait another month from now to confirm it because I might get him then for like 1.9 million. And then we can still have enough budget to get one more player in. So that's where we're currently at with that. But Evander's also definitely in. And he is a brilliant central midfield player. Only going to cost us potentially 1.9 million-ish. And he looks phenomenal. So that's another central midfield player to add to the squad, which is going to be here. What are we missing? I would say a central midfield player. That's Evander. And then probably a winger. We're probably one short because we've got Bayer, we've got Adele, and we've got Huskovic as the three sort of wide players. We could do with one more that's effective. But if we are a little short, then we have got players like Da Costa can play wide, of course. Players can play wide, but in terms of having like two players for every position, we're probably one player short in terms of having a winger. But that's probably it at this stage. Everything else is covered. We've got 2 left backs, we've got 2 right backs, 4 centre backs. Pivots are sorted. Everybody else is sorted. It is just the wingers that we're looking at now. But that team looks very, very good compared to last season. And, I mean, Boniface needs to have a good season again. My only concern is if Boniface was to have a poor start to the season, his backup is Mac Goper, who I'm not that convinced on. So it would have to be like, let's say, for example, then, I don't know, Bayer plays striker. But then if Bayer plays striker, we've only now got 2 wingers, really, or potentially 3 if we bring one in. So we really do need Boniface to have a good season. If he doesn't, that could really hold us back. So it's my only concern right this second is potentially that. But you can't have everything. We don't have a Tycoon takeover, do we? In fact, should we have a quick look at what they've done, the 2 teams with money here, Rennes and PSG. So they bought Dodo, who I'm very familiar with. They have bought Fekir on a free transfer, who's pretty decent. Gosens is okay. Like, that's not that game-changing, I don't think. Like, they improved their defence with Gosens and Leo there, but I don't know. No attackers, which is what I thought they might go for. Well, PSG are continuing their Premier League raid. They've got Cole Palmer now on loan, apparently, and Justin Clive at 41.5 million. 2 good players. I think they probably could have done better again there with their transfer window. So I'm feeling quite relieved that they're sort of not kicking on as much as they should be. I think we're gaining on them a little bit here. They're still obviously really good. I think when Hakimi goes, if he can go, that would be really nice. Have that sort of elite level right back who's lightning fast. It's like having an extra 2 players on the pitch sometimes. So that's one. And then having Mbappe, who I don't think is going to go anywhere. But Neymar's close to going to be retiring or really coming off the edge of his top level of form. We've got a chance, I think, of catching them. In the next 2 years, I think we've got a chance, unless they start to really rapidly increase their spending and who they're spending the money on. But I'm pretty confident catching these at the moment, you know. Okay, that is your little update. So all you're going to see soon is, I don't know if I'm going to accept this. We need central field players, really, so that'll be rejected. But yeah, let's have a look for another winger if we can, and we'll come back hopefully in a few weeks, and we'll play the first game of the season against Montpellier and see how we get on. And welcome back. Here we go then, first game of the season. Some matches have been played already. As usual, PSG and Rennes both won their game, so that's expected, I guess. And let's have a quick look at our squad for the season. At least our first team, at least in the first instance anyway. So let's have a look at that. So it's going to be Andrew in goal with Merlin, Badiashile, Gila, and Osei Samuel across the back with Crespo, Da Costa, and Johansson was like a midfield 3 there with Adele, Bayer, and Boniface as a front 3. That's going to be your team ordinarily. Badiashile is out for this game with suspensions. We're going to play Radici, I think, in there. In fact, I probably should look to try and get Evander in as soon as possible. 2.6. Let's just do it. Let's get him in. So Evander's going to class as a non-EU slot. I'm actually going to have to loan out then Juan David Vazquez, the centre-back. Okay, let's get into it. First game against Montpellier, or Montpellier, however you want to pronounce it. And it's going to be an interesting start to the season. We play PSG and Rennes. We play Rennes really early away, and then we don't play PSG for quite a long time. Play them both away in the first half of the season, which might give us a chance in the second half. Obviously, we beat Rennes. Obviously, we beat Rennes last season, where we're just trying, experimenting with things anyway. So let's see how the tactic gets on in this one. I might move him to winger attack actually, and have 2 winger attacks. Let's see how that plays. Okay, let's get into it. Let's see how we get on. Assistant manager says, I want to be impressed. Going to let them put on a show. Okay. Okay, there is a highlight instantly in this match. It's the very first thing that's happened. It's going to be a highlight of some sort. They go wide. They're going to cross the ball. We'll head it away. Costa gets it. Plays it back to the centre-back. We're going to build from here. We are. Merlin's got plenty of time. Doesn't need to rush anything. Plays a bit of a direct pass, but we get away with it. Oh, Boniface got lucky with that. Bayer gets it. Plays it back to Osei Samuel. Plays into Crespo. Into Gila. Plays across to Olcan. Into Crespo. Into Johansson. Grip build up play. Switching it again. Got lots of width. Across the pitch. Boniface is in. Is he going to score? Oh, he doesn't. We have the ball with the goalkeeper at the start of this highlight. Andrew's going to throw it out to Gila. He's got loads of time and space. Plays it straight into Bayer, into Crespo, into Bayer again. Uses Osei Samuel. He's got plenty of time and space to use Crespo. Moving it around the pitch very nicely. Boniface into Da Costa. Options here. Crespo got a nice little overload here. Here we go. Go into to Bayer in behind. He plays it across to Johansson. Plays it across. Boniface heads towards goal. It's just wide. We've got 71 possession so far. We've got 68% possession so far and nearly a 0.5 XG to their 0 shots. Mellon with the corner. Gila, and it's in. Come on, 1-0 to Paris. We have absolutely battered these so far. 71% possession. Right, there's a free kick right before half time here. Da Costa's going to take it. He might have a chance of scoring this. Goes around the wall. Keeper saves it. Oh, it's nearly tapped in though. And that's probably at the end of that. Highlight right before half time. They have the ball on the right hand side, our left. We go back to the centre back. Merlin. They play out from this left hand side here. Olcan travels with it. Plays it back to Gila. In here, please. Good. Bayer's got options. Johansson into Crespo. Into Bayer. Into Say. We could use centre back and go back inside if somebody can go and get on it. Come a bit deeper there, maybe. The strikers come deep as well. Okay. As long as one of you stays high, out of those two, that's okay. Bayer's got a lovely little half space run by our Kevin De Bruyne, which is Johansson today. Cuts back on his weaker foot. Oh, what a finish from Bayer. There we go. It's going to be 2-0. What a bit of football this is. This has been brilliant to watch, by the way, in the first half. And this is just on key highlights. If we'd have watched this in more detail in terms of highlights, we'd see some unbelievable football. Look at this lovely little Ronaldo chop-style turn here. Actually, it was a bit of a two-point turn. And Bayer scores 2-0. We'll say keep going. Going to take off Merlin, put on Salza. Goes on a yellow, and he's been on a yellow for quite a long time as well. Osei Samuel to Crespo. Crespo back to Osei Samuel. Loses the ball. Can we counter press here? They're going to try and play out against this, are they? This could be dangerous to them. It is. Boniface loses it himself, though. Crespo gets it back to Costa. Into Crespo. It's beautiful. It's beautiful football. Play it back inside if you need to. Oh, I loved it. Oh, okay. That wasn't so good. Now it's dangerous. Now it's dangerous. No, it's not. Late highlight here. It goes back to Salza. Salza plays it back to the centre-back. Back into Bayer on the left-hand side. Goes and beats his man. Plays across to Johansson. Into Ndai. Into Boniface. Is he going to score? He does not. He isn't happy because he wants a new contract. I wonder if that's why he's missing chances for us. But yeah, that's something else to watch out for. But I think, Bayer and, of course, Huskovic could both play striker if they need to as well. So there are options if he wants to, keep this up. Pretty good, that is. 1.77 XG away from home, 1.85 actually it finishes at, and they have a 0.40, and they were the home side. So that is really good from us. We'll say, well done, lads. Good win. Some nice football, some nice dangerous football as well. It wasn't just passive possession for the sake of it, right? We got some really good incisive passes in, and I'll make sure I get little Vazquez out on loan to somebody here off camera in a little while. That is going to conclude the episode. Thank you so much to you for watching all of this. It's been incredible to do. I really enjoyed this. We are in a really good position. In fact, one thing I forgot to mention, we are currently in the process of a board takeover. So we're waiting to see what the conclusion is on that. We'll come back next episode and talk about that. Okay, in terms of next episode, I looked at this fixture list quite in detail. I actually think the next best episode is going to be coming up back really soon. I reckon the Rennes game here, Monaco and Marseille. 3 good teams, all in a row, all coming up. We'll do that. And the next episode after that will probably then be the PSG game in there somewhere as well. So that gives a nice little space out of the fixtures. Obviously, the Champions League fixtures aren't placed into this just yet, but that's probably what we'll do there. So it'll be those 3 games next, these 3 right here, and then we'll see how the league table's looking after those few games, and see if we're in a genuine title race this year. If we were to beat Rennes away and PSG drop points at some point between now and the next episode, and during the next episode rather as well, we've got a chance. If PSG win 5 from 5 and we lose against Rennes, then it's already looking difficult, which is stupid to say, but that is the way things are in this league, isn't it? So that's the challenge. That's the Moneyball challenge there with us. So that's going to do it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.